Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is my review for Rain, Season 2, Episode 13, Sins of the Past. And this episode, I was, again, very much looking forward to, because last week's episode I thought was very good. A lot of people did not really like it. And I gotta say, this episode was so much better than that. I like this episode a lot more than last week's episode. I thought this episode was a lot stronger, and I'm gonna tell you guys why. Last week's episode focused on stuff that I did care about, but a lot of people didn't, and had a lot of side plots and things like that. Well, this episode focused more on the main story and things like that, which I definitely really enjoyed, and it ended up being the best episode of the season because I thought this episode was fantastic, and let's just get into it because overall, I loved it. So we see this serving girl. She spies a purple blossom in the snow, and she says she spotted it, so she gets the reward. And Kenna says this means a dance and new dresses. And Louis tells Mary that Antoine is coming for a visit, who of course is his brother. Who I really liked Antoine in the first episode we saw him in. The episode 11 2 weeks ago. I really liked his character, so I was excited to see him come back. He unrolls a map and shows her an enclave off the Lori Valley called the Eden of France, and he says things have been hard on her and wants them to have a new beginning. And he says he wants them to have a place there away from the castle, and says it's an abandoned chateau they could expand. And I honestly think that I honestly felt Mary was going to listen to him, but Mary says it's a beautiful idea, but what if they go and things aren't better? He says they already are better, and really she's saying this because of Francis. I mean, she hasn't divorced Francis yet, and while she truly does love Louis, she has to still pretend like she loves Francis. She does not, we know that she's not really care about Francis, but she's the queen, and, it's not really going to make anything better for her, so, I mean, I like where it's heading, though. I think it's very sad, but I like where it's heading. So a woman visits the cemetery, spots a fresh grave, sees it's already been broken open, the casket is busted open. She sees something in the trees and runs off screaming, and Antoine, King of Navarre, is presented to Mary and Francis. He asks for funds to help care for Protestant refugees from France, and he says he knows that he knew this would be awkward, and Francis says they might consider it. They might consider doing this, and basically, Louis finds Lola decorating, and she says there will be a feast to celebrate new beginnings. He says it's still warmer, and it's still winter, but she says it celebrates the promise of spring. And he asks her to be her. He has to be her escort, but she asks, won't his brother need her? And he says his brother finds his own way. And then we see Antoine making eyes at Kenna, and I'm just like, okay, him and Kenna are gonna end up in a relationship, which I don't want to happen because she's with Bash, of course. So she sees Bash and excuses herself, and Louis tells him to leave off Kenna because she's married, and Louis says she's the queen's sister-in-law, and Antoine says he may have never met Bash before, but honestly, what Louis is saying is kind of a double standard, because, I mean, he's in love with Mary, and he's, flirting with her and everything, but he's not, like, completely flirting with her. He simply is being a friend to her, and I, Louis is very quickly becoming my favorite character. I'm gonna be honest, guys. Louis is very quickly becoming my favorite character. Anytime he's on screen, I love his character, and I think by the end of the season, Louis is definitely probably my favorite character on the show now. So Antoine says he may have met Bash before. Mary tells Francis they can give Navarre a little money, but Catherine comes in and says absolutely not, since the Bourbons are potential rivals for the throne. And he tells her that his father sent all the Bourbons to the front lines of the last war to thin their herd. And Catherine says Louis is fine, but Antoine is reckless and ambitious. And she tells Francis to refuse to him and send him home. But Francis says he wants to see what's going on. Personally see if Antoine maybe has a point there. And I like that Francis wants to do that. I like that he's being more open about things because he knows that he was going a little too far as a king. But I think he's trying to improve his kingsmanship, and I don't think it's working. I think he's done too much already that he can't really fix it. So Antoine tells Louis he thinks Bash was responsible for their brother Marcus's death, and he says he went to meet Marcus and saw a man in a French. This was very interesting when he brought this up because I mean this was definitely very interesting because he saw a man in a French uniform riding away, and he says Marcus had been stabbed in the back, and he says he searched for the man for days but never saw him again until now. And Louis says he must be sure, and Antoine says he won't leave court until he learns the truth, and he wonders what Kenna knows as his wife. And Francis comes to ask Catherine about Claude, and she asks what he heard, and he says he heard Clarissa, who of course Clarissa is this weird ghost, and he asks if she's still alive, and she asks if he's seen her, and she says she didn't know and wondered if the prophecy was to scare her, and he says the prophecy was true, and this was just weird. I don't know where this came from. Francis begins to bleed from the eyes and collapses. She holds him, calls for help, and Marion's mother come running, but Francis isn't there. Catherine has this weird vision, says she's had a vision, and says the prophecy will come to pass. The doctor tries to check her, and Catherine says to send her home. So, basically, Frances says, so basically it was a vision that she had and everything, so now she's having these weird visions, and, we don't really know what's going on there. So Frances says Bash told them that she was speaking to people that weren't there. Claude shows up too and asks her she's terribly ill and seems pleased. The doctor points out sores on her mouth and tongue and says her hands are afflicted as well. And Claude implies that she has an STD, and that's what it's all about. But and Catherine wonders if she has syphilis, then curses, and says that it's so like Henry to leave her a last gift that she won't forget, and his horrors. And Claude says there are regimens to cure her, but they are excruciating. And Catherine tells Frances that she doesn't want to be remembered as a mad syphilitic queen, and says to spread the word she died of um, consumption if she doesn't survive the treatment. So she's very worried now that she could have this STD. And Bash comes to their rooms, and Kenna says she prepared all of his favorite foods. He says he's not staying and says he can't shrug off what she did. He says he can't do this right now, and says someone reported that a man clawed his way out of a grave and was terrorizing people. She mocks and he says destruction has consequences. And she says dead men and ghosts are the reasons he's leaving her, and says his page and uncles have poisoned his mind with superstition. He glares and she says she's sorry and says they're married for life and knows they need to make peace and promises they will. And Frances is tasking Narcisse to find out if Antoine's request for funds is justified because he actually thinks Antoine might have a point here. And Frances says it seems like a mission that should please him. But Narcisse asks if what really is he wants is to get rid of Louis. He can arrange an accident. Basically that he can arrange an accident and Louis can get hurt and everything. And I like seeing Frances and Narcisse working together, but at the same time, Narcisse is really what's making Frances into this horrible person. He really is. Narcisse is turning Frances into the horrible king, and it's not Frances doing it, it's really Narcisse that's doing it. So Frances says he's alive at his whim and says he can't believe he's dumping poison into his ear about Mary. He reminds him that he exists to serve him and nothing more. Narcisse says Antoine can be ruthless about his enemies, and Antoine then finds Catherine, and not Catherine, Kenna. He finds Kenna and asks for a tour of the castle, but she says she knows of his reputation, and, she doesn't want to be led on by him because she knows that he's going to try to flirt with her. And I like that about Antoine and Louis. They're very different. I like that they're not the same because, Louis is much more caring, while Antoine's much more, puts himself out there. He is much more vocal with what he wants, and Louis is more the quiet one, which I like. And basically, he says people can be more than their reputation. She gives in and walks with him and says he's terrible, and she doesn't trust him at all. So Narcisse comes to sit by Lola and says he's heard she's seeing Louis and asks if someone is making her do it since the man is so boring. He invites her to go to the hot springs and he's still trying to have sex with her. Now it's not even about getting together with her. It's all about having sex with her now. And after she's had her fill of Louis at the party, she says she can't believe he's still coming after her when he's been discredited and has nothing. He says he'll be back on top and tells her to wear the flower he gave her as a sign she wants to go. And you can really see that Lola's just sick of this. She's tired of him, flirting with her. And while it was at first fun, she's now sick of it. It's really annoying and she doesn't want it anymore. So Catherine is subjected to a treatment where birds peck her feet to draw out the bile of the disease. It hurts, and the doctor says the longer the better. Claude is gleeful that her mother is being tortured, and Claude tells her poison hurts too, and says her stomach still aches from her efforts to kill her. And Mary thanks Frances for all he's done for her. He says a new chattertow is for both of them, but she says it's more than that. She says she appreciates him sleeping nearby patiently on the divan, and he lies down and says he'll do it as long as she needs it that way. And I honestly thought that I feel like they're gonna kill off Catherine this season. I really do. I mean, Francis I know is probably gonna die this season. Just the way he's headed, I think he's going to. But Catherine as well. I feel like Catherine's headed for death. I really do. I mean, just the way they're writing her, I really feel like she is. So she invites him to lie down with her unless he's fond of the sofa. He goes to her side of the bed and she makes it clear she only wishes there to be sleep. He agrees and lies down. She snuffs the candle and lies down, and Claude finds Narcisse whispering in the shadows and greets him. And she says it's nice to see him sulking about. Now, Narcisse flirting with Lola would be okay if he wasn't flirting with Claude. Because we know that him and Claude are much different. Claude actually likes him. She's not annoyed by him. So, what he's doing with Lola is totally just, like, wrong. But he's the villain, so obviously he's going to do bad things. So she propositions him and says she wants him to bed her and tutor her on court intrigue. And she says she'll end up a chess piece in another marriage gambit again. She wants to learn the game herself. And he puts his arms around her and says he can guide her as closely as she'd like. And basically, yeah, so that's what happened there. and I thought that was very interesting when we saw that. And basically, we're seeing. Oh, I just skipped that whole scene, guys. Sorry about that. But Mary thanks Rance for all he's done for her. He says a new chat is for both of them, but she says it's more than that. She says she appreciates him sleeping nearby patiently on the divan, and he lies down and says he'll do it as long as she needs it that way. And basically goes to his side of the bed, and she makes it clear she only wishes there to be sleep. And, she's still very worried about the rape, and she's going to mention it definitely. But at this point, I don't feel that it's that she doesn't want to be touched by a man, is that she's not comfortable being touched by Francis because essentially he is the one that did this to her. And she still has not forgiven him for that. And he's becoming a very bad man, and she no longer she doesn't really love him. She's only there because she wants to be queen. She loves Louis, and she wants to be touched by Louis. That's really all it is. I think she wants to be with Louis, but she doesn't want Francis to touch her because she doesn't feel that way with him anymore. So I like seeing this development here. So basically, Mary lies awake, and this is such a hard scene to watch. She's reliving her rape, and just this is so hard to watch because you're seeing this look in her face, just the anguish in her. And Francis rolls over against her. She flees the bed. She says she can't bear the sound of a man's breath next to her. He asks her to help her, but she says nothing can help. He says the nightmare is over, holds out his arms to her. She goes to him, and he gently caresses her hair while she cries, and basically, she's crying, and that was definitely very sad to see. And I felt very bad for Mary because I felt bad for her. So Bash goes to the cemetery with the witness, and she says she didn't know the man, but the priest found him dead from the cold, and he was buried in a pauper's grave. And she says there have been talk of the dead rising in other villages too, and visiting their loved one. And she says she saw him, and he came after her. She says the men are searching the woods, and she says the man is Hell's own. He finds footprints and says he'll track him. And Louis escorts Lola to the Winter's Eve ball, and she notes that Mary looks happy, and she's happy that Mary looks happy because it's been a while since you really seen Mary happy. So Antoine finds Kenna alone, says she made up having a husband. She says she's busy, and I'm just like, Kenna, why are you doing this? She says he's busy at King's deputy. He says nepotism keeps bastard brothers different. He implies that Bash is a novice with the sword, but she says he served with Henry in the Italian Wars. He asks to hear more, and Bash finds a man in the woods. He says his name is um Aristio. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's a Greek, and he says he came looking for work to get back to Crete. He says he fell asleep in the cold and woke up in a small box, so the shroud is all he has to keep warm. And, you really feel bad for his characters. Obviously he's poor, and Bash says he wasn't dead. This is a time when there was no middle. You were either very rich or very poor. It was one of those times. It's hard to, I like seeing these little scenes because it really makes us realize what time period we're in. Because, as I said, it's a time when you were either really rich or really poor. There was no in between. There was no middle class. So Ash says he wasn't dead, just unconscious, and was mistaken for dead. And Aristotle says he didn't rise alone, but she saw a woman dressed in white that pulled him from the grave and brought him back to life. And that's really weird the way that's going on. So now it makes me think that Catherine was not seeing Henry. She wasn't seeing visions of Henry. He actually came back from the dead somehow. And I feel like what Aristotle's saying is what's happening to Catherine. So Lola talks to Louis about a new dance, but says he's not much for dancing, and goes to talk to Antoine. He says Ken is a bewitching siren. He says she confirmed that Bash was with Henry in the Italian War. Louis says she should get more information from someone else so it doesn't call attention to them and it looks like a bourbon vengeance mission. And Antoine says it sounds like Louis has spent too much time making friends of the Valios court. He reminds him how miserable Marcus was between his injury and when he drank himself to death over being a cripple, and he tells him to remember whose side he's on. Because, he needs to remember whose side he's on. He's not on the Catholic side. He's on the Protestant side because he's a Protestant, and I like Antoine saying that, but honestly, I think Louis is neutral. I really do. I think Louis agrees with both of them in some ways. Like, he understands why, he obviously he doesn't like tapping into Protestants, but he's not going to be rude to the Catholics, which I like seeing. I like seeing that he's going to be a good guy, even though Antoine's telling him that he shouldn't be good to them. He should be rude to them. He should be nasty. Why be rude to them when they've been rude to him, but why be rude to them? Honestly, he should not be. He should be rude to them, but he's just such a nice guy and such a reasonable guy that he's not going to be rude to them. So Narcisse reports to Francis and Mary and says English had offered her help to Antoine to deal with the Protestant refugees, and Francis has to be sure, and Narcisse says he can't be certain. Francis says it means the English could be poised to invade at any time if they have access to Nevers. And Lola sees Narcisse kissing Claude in a corner and flirting with her, and she walks away and runs into Kenna and tells her what she saw. And I like that Kenna tells her straight out what happened because, I mean, Lola has a right to be angry at Narcisse. Kenna says she's sorry, but Lola says he irritates her for trying to better when he's dallying with someone else, and that's really why Lola's upset because, I mean, he's basically just a flirt. He really is. He flirts with women, he has sex with them, and he wants nothing else to do with them. I mean, he does want to work with them, but that's really it. So Mary asks Louis to find out if the threat to France is real. He says no, and he says he's courted Claude and Lola and let her manage his personal life, but he can't spy on his brother. Even though he wants to, he can't spy on his brother, and he tells her she doesn't return his feelings, but wants to play on them. He says, like any other king, Antoine can be bought, and I like seeing this scene definitely, because, I mean, he doesn't really want to do anything bad he doesn't really want to do anything bad here, and Kenneth says Claude is likely just a road back to the royal family for Narcisse. Lola says he's unpredictable, and she wants a reliable, predictable man. By the way, guys, I do want to mention something here that I really enjoyed. In the background of this episode, in this scene, they were playing a instrumental orchestral version of Sia's Song Chandelier, and oh my god, it sounded amazing. The score, I forgot to tell you guys, the score to the show is very, very good. I've always really liked the score, and I think that was one of the best like scores they've done, and one of the best covers they've done. I definitely really enjoyed that. So Lola says he's unpredictable and she wants a reliable, predictable man, and Louis comes to ask her to dance, and Lola takes his hand. Now, do I like Lola and Louis? I like them as friends. I don't want them together. I want Louis and Mary together. The reason I don't want Louis and Lola together is because Lola, I feel, belongs with someone like Francis. Francis is going to support her. Francis is going to be there for her, and that's what Lola wants. So Claude tells Narcisse she's worried about pregnancy, and he says there are methods to avoid it. She tells him that she won't let him impregnate her to get into the royal family. She says there are other ways to pleasure each other that don't risk pregnancy. That's the thing I like about Claude, that she's not going to just let Narcisse take advantage of her. She has rules. She has things that she thinks are good and things that she thinks that they should not do, and I like that about her character. So he asks what if he refuses. She says his station can't lower, and she's a princess. She'll do things her way. He says he declines, puts on his jacket. She says he can't decline, but he says he can. He tells her he'll give her one free lesson of charge. He says some people merely believe they have power while others really have it. So Francis comes to Antoine, says he's ready to talk money. They head out with the guard following, and Francis brings Antoine to a room where Mary waits, and Francis says they heard England may be bargaining with him. And they tell him he won't be leaving until they have the truth. So he says England has offered sizable funds for entry into Navarre, and he says he doesn't want to deal with Elizabeth, but they need money. So they really have no choice but to deal with her. So Francis asks why he shouldn't kill him now, and he says his wife Jean will accommodate England if he doesn't come home, and says he came to make a deal with them, risking his head on a chopping block, courtesy of Elizabeth. And of course, we know that he is cheating on his wife. We know that he has his wild parties and everything. And basically, he says Elizabeth is building a huge network of spies, and that makes him very, very nervous that Elizabeth is doing this. I mean, really, Elizabeth is the one that's gonna. I mean, basically, what he's saying is that you have to help me, or else I'm gonna die. And Mary asks why Elizabeth would make this extreme move now, and he says England's a Protestant country, and she thinks Catholic France might crush Protestantism and come for her next. And I like seeing it because, I mean, they should be worried. The Protestants definitely should be worried. I mean, they're killing people, they aren't being reasonable to people, they're not listening to them. So I understand why they're worried, because they should be worried, and I think they have a reason to be worried, definitely. I thought that was definitely a very well done scene. So Antoine says giving Navarre the money they need is the best way to assure nothing proceeds. Next, Catherine is locked into this giant barrel where she's baked in hot water. She asks for water, and when she hears someone coming in, it's Narcisse, and I'm like, please don't try to flirt with her. That'd be disgusting. Like, seriously. He offers her the water, and she drinks, then thanks him. She says she clearly knows what this is and why she's in it. He says he's seen a mercury oven before, and says Claude has told anyone who will listen about her illness, and just what seems like he's trying to do is just get her to work with him. And Bash walks the man through the woods, and then they see the hunters. Bash tells them not to run, but the man won't listen. He takes off, and they shoot him down, and Bash is annoyed. And Narcisse sponges off Catherine's forehead and says he sat with his brother while he endured the same treatment. She says she only has sores in her mouth and hands. He asks if that's possible. She's been poisoned rather than having syphilis. He says her symptoms are where she touches food. And that's very interesting because, honestly, I mean, she almost poisoned Claude, so it could be very interesting. I find that very interesting that she could have been poisoned. and he asks what she touches often that no one else uses, and he says not clothing, and then she says she read Henry's Bible and says she took it from his death. Why do I feel like Narcisse was the one that poisoned her so he'd get closer to her? I don't know. Narcisse just seems like a very fucked up individual, so I feel like he'd do something like that. And he says Henry went bad and now belongs to her. She gets out of the oven, tested for poison. She says the book is deadly. Antoine is drunk in the courtyard when Bash offers to help him down. Find another bottle. He asks him to hold his bottle and then asks him to hold his sword, then changes back to his bottle, and Bash takes it. And Antoine says he loves the wine in France and then talks to women while he has his arm around Bash. And he mentions a specific villa where plans to meet two Corsican women that's right on the beach. And Bash says it's miles from the beach. He was testing Bash's knowledge of the place where his brother Marcus was attacked, and because of course, he wants to see if Bash really did know what was going on there. So I like Antoine, he's very smart with that, and I like his character. So Bash finds Kenna waiting for him and says she's in full pout mode. He apologized for missing the feast, and she asks if he even tried or wanted to be away. She says she's sorry that she got in too deep with Henry and was out for her own survival. He says he saw a man killing her. He saw a man killed tonight because people saw only the bad in him and didn't look any further. He says ignorance, and Bash says he wants to see the truth of her heart, not just one part of it, and he says it can take years, but she says her heart isn't that complicated. He says it's one of those mull-eyed Christmas drinks. He says he can't do without it, and she says that she loves him too. He kisses her, and seems like they're okay now. I like that they're okay. I mean, they've been having problems recently, so I like that they're okay, but at the same time, they're not going to stay happy. That's, we know in this show that's not, any couple that's happy, they're not going to stay happy. I feel like those two are going to stay happy, but I feel like definitely other couples are not going to stay happy. So Antoine talks to Louis and says Bash is the one that stabbed their brother. He asks what he's going to do, and Antoine says he should suffer as sorry guys, he should suffer as Marcus did, and Mary asks Francis how they can convince Elizabeth that she's not a threat to her throne, and basically it's going to get interesting with Louis, because now Louis is turning against Bash, and Louis has a big decision to make. Does he really want to do this? Because, I mean, how is Mary going to feel about this? I'm very interested in seeing how Mary would feel if he told Mary straight out that, hey, I'm turning against your brother. I don't know how Mary would feel about it. I don't know if she'd like that he's doing it, and I don't know exactly, essentially, if she'd like what he's doing. So, Mary asks Francis how they can convince Elizabeth that she's not a threat to her throne. He says they can't explain his actions to her, and says they have to give Nevers the money and can't forget the Chateau because it can't be defeated. And basically, Mary says she'll be looking over her shoulder for Elizabeth every day of her life. She says when she looks at Francis, she remembers what they had and it's torment. He says he wasn't trying to control her when he said the queens don't have the freedom of kings. And she tells him that she's granting him his freedom to find love elsewhere. And the scene I really love because he asks how she could send him into another. She touches him, says because she loves him. And of course, he's saying, oh, leading separate lives is not going to get us anywhere. And says one of them should be happy. She kisses his cheek, and basically, she's letting him go. I think that Mary is going to go to, I think she's going to go to that place to Eden. I think she's going to go there with Louis because now she wants to escape Francis, and the only way to escape Francis is to go with Louis, and I definitely feel like she's going to go with Louis. However, if Louis tells Mary that he's planning on killing Bash, what's going to happen here? Because I don't think Bash is going to die. Bash cannot die, because you're not going to kill every single main character in the show. You're not going to do that. So, how is Mary going to feel about him killing Bash? I don't know if Bash really did it. I don't know. It just seems too easy for me. It just seems too simple, It seems like one of those things that's just too simple. It doesn't seem like it was him. It seems like it could be anyone else, and I'm interested in seeing who it actually was. And, as far as Elizabeth, how they can convince Elizabeth that she's not a threat to her throne, that's going to be interesting to see. I don't know how that's going to be overall. Let's talk about Claude and Narcisse. Very interesting between those two. It seems like Claude has certain rules that Narcisse needs to follow. I'm interested in seeing if Narcisse is actually going to listen to her, because in my opinion, he just wants to recruit her and do what he can do with her. Catherine seems like he's also trying to get on his side, but I kind of feel like he is the one that poisoned Catherine. I don't know why, but I have this feeling that, that he could have done it. I just feel like he could have. And then I guess the last thing we'll talk about is, Kenna and Bash seem like they're okay, so not much to say there. Narcisse needs to stop seeing Lola. He needs to stop seeing her, he needs to leave her alone. She wants nothing to do with him, and he needs to understand that Lola wants nothing to do with you. She never did, she never will. you need to understand there's this thing called boundaries, and you need to give her boundaries. So I like that. Who do I think Francis should end up with? Lola. Lola's right there. Ended with Lola. Mary will go with Francis, and also Antoine needs to stop trying to be with Kenna. I know he's not going to stop. I know he's still going to try to be with Kenna because he is a ladies' man and everything. So I'm interested in seeing how that's going to be also. And I guess the only question is, why is Catherine having these dreams? I don't think these were dreams now because, of course, we saw that man that got out of the gravestone, and now I feel like Henry somehow got out of the gravestone. Why this happened, I don't know. How this can happen, I don't know. And I don't know how these things can happen, but it's going to be interesting to see what really ends up happening there. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys saw this episode overall. I love this episode. By far, best episode of the season. There's so much tension going on now. I mean, Louis turning against Bash could be very interesting to see. Mary abandoning Francis, I'm looking forward to seeing. I definitely feel like Francis is just going to lose everything at some point. He's very close to losing everything. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for, I think I'm going to review a movie. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.